There is, as we all know, a concerted effort by the left and by the Biden administration to claim that the greatest threat faced by America, not just the greatest domestic threat, the greatest threat from anywhere, comes from white supremacy. Here's Merrick Garland, the Attorney General, saying exactly that. Listen.
According to an unclassified summary of the March intelligence assessment, the two most lethal elements of the domestic violence extremist threat are racially or ethnically motivated violent extremists and militia violent extremists. In the FBI's view, the top domestic violent extremist threat comes from racially or ethnically motivated violent extremists, specifically those who advocated for the superiority of the white race.
Now, I shouldn't be laughing because you've got this serious person, according to classified, but you're dealing with a ridiculous individual. This is an unserious person. By the way, I'm extremely relieved that this clown, and I'm going to call him a clown, isn't on the Supreme Court. Thank you, Mitch McConnell, for squelching this fool, for keeping him off the bench. Can you imagine this loon on the Supreme Court? Now, these people don't look like loons, right? They've got the graying hair. They've got this is what I call the John Kerry posture. It's a posture of seriousness, but when you listen to what they're saying and think about it, you realize you're listening to a raving maniac. Here's another raving maniac. This is the former FBI top official, Frank Figliuzzi. He was on Meet the Press, and he goes, he's talking about January 6th. Arresting low-level operatives is merely a speed bump, not a roadblock. And now I'm quoting him. In order to really tackle terrorism, you've got to attack and dismantle the command and control element. That may mean people sitting in Congress right now. What? Does he actually want the Biden administration to go arrest members of Congress? Members of Congress who did nothing. For what? Arrest them for their intemperate rhetoric that led to January 6th. So these people have totally lost their minds. But even as they try to magnify January 6th with comical exaggeration, there's a dangerous aspect to this. People are sitting in solitary confinement because of this rhetoric. And a new question has kind of arisen. And once again, I want to congratulate the writer Julie Kelly for digging into this. I also want to congratulate Senator Ron Johnson, who seems to be the sole Republican senator who is really getting into this. Now, here's Senator Ron Johnson's point. Who let the protesters into the Capitol? I don't know if you've ever done a Capitol tour. I have. You can't just walk into the Capitol. The doors are locked. You have to go through metal detectors. You have to have a pass. How did all these people, hundreds of them, get in? A simple question. And by the way, it's never been answered. Now, there's one easy way to answer it. There are 14,000 hours of footage. Everything that happens in the Capitol is recorded. 14,000 hours of footage. And guess what? The Biden administration won't release it. Because I think they're afraid that if they did, we would all see what happened. We would actually know the truth. What they were hoping for is a January 6th commission that would edit and doctor the footage, would basically show excerpts, would do the same kind of cherry picking that the House Democrats did. But if you show the whole picture, the context, if you will, then we can all see what's really going on. Well, it turns out that Ron Johnson has seen a lot of this footage. Guess why? The answer is because Johnson is on the permanent subcommittee on investigations for the Senate. And Johnson's office has flagged a piece of footage that's very, very disturbing. Here's what it shows. That at around 2:30 p.m. on January 6th, by the way, this is before more than 300 protesters were able to enter the building. Before that, Johnson says there's an unauthorized person, unidentified, who is trying unsuccessfully to open a set of double doors to get into the Capitol. Then 5 people return to the double doors shortly thereafter, and they walk past a Capitol police officer. In other words, they are apparently doing this with sanction or with permission. And these 5 people, it says, once at the double doors, one of the 5 people push the left door's crash bar, and this time it opens. And all 5 individuals then exit the building at 2:33 p.m. 5 guys show up. They lift the latch, they open the door, there's a Capitol Police officer right there, and then they leave. But they say the last person, the last one of these 5, leaves the door ajar. In other words, unlocked. Quote, allowing people from the outside of the building to gain entry to the Capitol. At 2:34, so literally 2 minutes later, people begin to enter through the door, and the police officer who was in the vicinity of this door 1 minute earlier walks away to another hallway away from the door and out of view of the security camera. So the guy who was supposedly guarding the door decides to take off. He moves outside the view of the camera, and then for the next 15 minutes, 309 people enter the Capitol with no law enforcement there to stop them or to tell them not to do that. Now, one of the guys involved in the January 6th, quote, insurgency, this is Jason Dolan. He's an alleged member of the Oath Keepers group. He makes a very striking statement in an interview. This was a little while ago with the Gateway Pundit. He said that when he approached the Capitol, somebody from the inside opened the doors. Now, the government has never admitted this is true, but once again, where is the surveillance footage? The surveillance footage would show us how the doors got open. They would show us not just from the outside, but from the inside. So this is an obviously critical question. How did those doors get opened? What we're getting at here is, we all know there have been a lot of assertions that there was intelligence beforehand of what was going to happen. And one can interpret somewhat benignly this as a major intelligence failure, a major government response failure. There should have been plenty of security there. They should have known what could happen. They should have acted to prevent it. But all of that implies mere negligence. What I'm getting at here is something perhaps more insidious, which is to say perhaps it was the case that they wanted people to come into the building, that there was a scheme afoot, if you will, to make it easy for them to come in. Not that the people didn't choose to go in, they did, but crowds have a certain psychology of their own. If people are moving in one direction, you and I have all been members of crowds, you kind of get pushed by the crowd in that direction. But my point is, normally you rely on organization, on planning, on authority. Go over here, you can't cross over there. No, this barricade is up here to tell you not to cross. So the bottom line of it is, and the question being asked by Ron Johnson, he's the only GOP senator asking it is, was there a scheme afoot by someone, we don't even know by who, to let these guys into the building so that a mere kind of crowd-pushing activity, a walkthrough, as I've called it, the kind of thing that you'd see on a college campus. You've seen it with Occupy Wall Street. This is much milder than anything that happens with, by the way, Antifa or Black Lives Matter. This is not even anything approaching what's happening in Portland for the past year. And by the way, Ron Johnson's been good about that as well. In a letter that he's written, he basically said, listen, please explain to me, he's asking the Biden administration, why there is such a huge discrepancy in federal treatment of the January 6 protesters on the one hand and the so-called George Floyd protesters on the other. Very lenient treatment for the George Floyd protesters, as if to say, this is a marvelous display of idealism on your part. Okay, we got you. Okay, you can leave, you can go. Minor charges or no charges at all. Whereas in the case of the Capitol, of the January 6 protesters, one charge on top of another, many of them repeating the same old thing, but an attempt to give maximum sentencing, maximum penalties, maximum intimidation. And so why this double standard? Is it the case that the January 6 protesters were sort of, from the Biden people's point of view, their guys, and so we go after them, whereas, hey, the Antifa guys, the BLM guys, those are our guys, those are our street thugs, so we're going to treat them obviously more benignly. Why? Because they're basically doing our bidding, or they're acting out the results of our policies. We want to defund the police, and so we should fully expect, if you will, a kind of upsurge of crime, and if there is an upsurge of crime, well, the criminals are basically responding to our policies, and therefore we should not be too harsh in going after them. I think what we're seeing here, and this is an investigation that goes on, and I was against the January 6th Commission because I thought that it was a fake, it was a rigged inquiry, it would come up with pre-decided results, but a real inquiry, that is desperately needed. That is not something that has happened as of yet.